Good evening. Today is 11th of September 2018. A very cold Tuesday. Not very cold, but then. And I'm going to show you another way to run your Flask applications. This is exactly where we left off in the previous video, where we defined our route and we had our main check that the file is being invoked as a main instead of being imported into another file, and we customized the port, and then whether we want to run in debug mode or not, and then the host address to which we want to bind the server. Cool. Now in the latest release of Flask, there has been an additional way or an alternative way of starting the server, which doesn't require you to have line 14 and 15. So you don't need to check if the file is being invoked as a main or imported into another file. And how it works is you go into your terminal, and we are still in the folder we've been using. You see the app.py and the env folder. You can ignore this py cache. It is a way the Python interpreter speeds up or optimizes its work. So it basically stores the previous bytecode of your file, and then the next time it will check whether it has to recompile or not. It is not technically a compilation because Python is not a compiled language, but I mean, you can feel free to delete it if you don't want it. It will regenerate it anytime it feels like regenerating it, but for now our focus is on the app.py file. So this is the content. All I did was to comment out line 14 and 15, where I was checking if the file is being invoked as a main program that you want the interpreter to interpret, or it is being used in another module. If you want to go this approach I'm going to show you, then you don't need to do this check, okay? And how you can run without doing the main blah 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 stuff is, in your terminal you have to create an environment variable called Flask app and set it to the file containing your Flask application. So in my case it is app.py. okay, and once I have done that, in fact I could have done it all in one line, so I'm showing you. You say Flask app is equal to app.py, and then you can say Flask run. Whoa, sorry, I haven't activated my virtual environment. That is why it is not finding the Flask command. This is a beautiful mistake I have made, and like I promised, I am not editing it out because these things do happen many times in the life of a programmer. So I'm going to activate my env. Okay, and then now I can come back and do this, and hopefully, yeah, it's working. So you export an environment variable called Flask app, and you set it to the file containing your Flask application, and then you say Flask run. So this Flask command here is going to do a magic from this file. Is going to determine what is holding the Flask application, and it's going to invoke the run function in on whatever object is holding your Flask application with the default configuration. So as you can see, it is running on port 5000. Like I told you before, 5000 is the default port for the server built into Flask. So in the previous video we were able to customize it to 8500 here, but in this approach we are not able to do the same, even though it is possible, and I will show you how to do that in another video. But I just want you to know how you can run your program. Okay, cool. I'm going to kill this server by pressing Ctrl+C, and the server is killed. I'm going to clear my screen, and I'm going to break it down again. I could actually have done export Flask app is equal to app.py, and then now I'll do Flask run. Remember, this is only going to work if and only if you have activated your virtual environment. Otherwise, the Flask command here is not known. It is only available in your virtual your virtual environment. Okay, so I'm going to kill it, and I want you to take note of something. You can see that debug mode is turned on here. How do you turn it on or off if you want to run it this way, as opposed to how we did it yesterday by specifying debug equals true or false? That is what I'm going to show you next. So to do that, you export another environment variable called Flask debug. If you set it to 0, it means false. If you set it to 1, it means true. Okay, so once I do this, I can do Flask run, and you can see that my server is running now, but then debug mode is turned off. Let me show you how to turn it on. I'm going to kill the server, and then I will export Flask debug is equal to 1. This means I want to turn on debug mode, and then I will do Flask run, and now you see that debug mode is turned on. So if we came here and we refreshed, you can see that everything is working as it did before, because all that we changed was a way of starting the server that is different from what we learned in the previous video. Aside that, nothing has changed. So basically, a recap of the top stories. There is an alternative way of starting your Flask server, which doesn't call for you to have this if main check here. That is line 14 and 15. You just create your Flask object, register your route handlers, and you make sure you activate your virtual environment. Once that is done, you need to export an environment variable called Flask app and set it to be equal to the file containing your Flask application. Once that is done, you can go ahead and execute the command Flask run. And I'm reminding you once again that the Flask command is only active when you activate your virtual environment. If I deactivate the virtual environment, my terminal is going to tell me it has no idea what this Flask command is. Okay, and I also showed you how to turn on or off debug mode, and how you are able to do that is to export an environment variable called Flask debug. This Flask debug, and if you set it to 0, which is false, it means you don't want debug mode to be on. If you set it to 1, it means you want debug mode to be on. So I set it to Flask debug equals 0, and as you can see, the server was running with debug mode off. What it means is that you are not going to get the hot reload when you change something in your file. Okay, but it's good for production use. In production, never ever leave debug mode on. Otherwise, you'll be exposing yourself to vulnerabilities on the internet, which is already hostile. But whilst you are doing development, I mean, you always want to have the advantage of hot reload, so you can set Flask debug equals 1, and then you have debug mode on, so that you'll be blessed with hot reload, and then the verbose error messages that will be spitted in the browser if there is an error in your file. So thank you once again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, leave your comments, engage me, and I'll see you in the next video.